of the time throughout the country. Animal abuse will, sadly, always exist and have a direct negative impact upon the animals and humans within our society. The occurrences will only increase in volume and severity if we don't push for a change within our country. The governing laws need to require stricter guidelines and sentencing mandates for those found guilty of animal abuse. It is shocking that so many statistics exist regarding the correlation between animal cruelty and human crime, yet there is very little focus on this by our legislation. A simple Google search will pull up pages upon pages of some of the most horrific crimes against animals. The puppy doe story is one of the most terrifying I have ever come across. I remember the night I read this story for the first time. I was physically sick, and the tears were uncontrollable. After hearing Kaya's story, I hugged my animals a little tighter, and there's no doubt in my mind that all of you did as well. Those of us who have acquired family pets through shelters and rescues know all too well that any one of our animals could have just as easily been another puppy doe case. The internet and social media are great resources for rescues. It gives us a platform to share information and pictures about our adoptable dogs. We have found many great homes for our dogs through the power of social media and the online resources that reach millions of people every day. However, it is a very dangerous cesspool of undesirable people who do not value animals the same way we do. As a rescue, we utilize volunteers to do reference checks, home checks, veterinary checks, and meet and greets to ensure that applicants for our dogs are willing and able to provide a loving home. When animals are posted on Facebook and Craigslist as free to a good home, a very dangerous door is opened. Typically, there is no follow-through on the part of the current owner to ensure that the potential home is a good one. Back in May of this year, one of our board directors stumbled upon a Craigslist ad posted by a person selling puppies who were only 6 days old. They were listed for $100 a piece. $100 is not a lot of money for people that are looking for animals for use in fight rings and the like. They will definitely make much more than that $100 investment. Normally, our focus and priority is to rescue dogs from our local shelters who are in danger of being euthanized, but every once in a while, a rescue needs some good puppy energy. Sorry, I lost my spot. We get these 3 puppies at just 6 days old. As a side note, it is illegal in the state of Pennsylvania to sell puppies under the age of 8 weeks old. If the man had sold them, they would probably have ended up dead. It's extremely hard for the uneducated and inexperienced person to care for such young puppies who require around-the-clock care. Even the most educated person can run into many health problems. We have a wealth of knowledge in the form of volunteers, veterinarians and vet techs, nurses, and longtime rescuers, but we still run into quite a few roadblocks with the trio that became known as our famous s'mores pups, Marshmallow, Hershey, and Graham Cracker. Marshmallow, the runt of the litter, was not eating well, and it was touch and go with him for a while. I remember one day visiting Melissa, who was taking care of all 3 puppies. She had been bottle feeding them around the clock. Melissa looked at me with tears in her eyes, exhausted, and told me she could barely sleep because she was afraid she was going to lose Marshmallow. In between feedings every 2 hours, fluids, temperature monitoring, and administering medication. At one point, all of the puppies got bacterial infections. These are just some of the risks of the uneducated person having access to infant puppies they find online. It's a risk with bottle feeders to develop illnesses, as they are the most susceptible to disease than the average pup is that would be nursing from mom. Our s'mores pups never received their initial immunity from their mom, and puppies do not start making antibodies until around 4 weeks old. This handsome guy right here next to me, he's Hershey, one of the s'mores pups, who's doing fantastic. He's now 5 months old, living with his forever mommy, who is also a foster failure, and her husband, Rich. Our other 2 s'mores pups, Marshmallow and Graham Cracker, were both adopted out to amazing people who still update us on their progress. We have taken it upon ourselves to reach out to the postings on Craigslist that are offering puppies free or very cheap, to make the owner aware of the dangers that lurk. When we can, we offer to take the dogs in, but, like most rescues, we are constantly at or above capacity. Our hearts ache for the ones that we can't take in, either because we have no room or the owner is just unwilling to let them go without getting their money. I read a quote supposedly given by a dog fighter in an article in the Examiner that stuck with me. I don't know how accurate the source of this quote is, but it is a good indication of the lengths that people will go to just to get their hands on dogs for fight rings. He said, The hardest thing is to get enough dogs and cats to use as bait during training. One good source is to check local newspapers for ads that offer a pet dog or pet cat for free. My wife dresses up very neatly and collects them for me. If that source is running dry, I just hire some local gang kids to fetch me dogs and cats. They scour backyards and alleys and take whatever number of animals we need. They make sure that they leave the doors or gates open so people just believe they accidentally left them unlatched, and that's how their animals got out and got lost. Craigslist's position is that the sale of animals is forbidden, but suggests a rehoming fee. I think that we can all agree that not allowing animal postings at all is a great way to make it harder for dog fighters to get their bait. Owners who rehome their pets in this way often do not run background checks, check references, or keep documentation about who is taking their animal. It isn't just dog fighters who search for their next victims via Craigslist either. There are people out there who want to find animals just for the simple fact that they want to torture them. Crushing. The act of crushing an animal with a part of your body for arousal. This is an actual fetish and was really brought to light in August of 2012 when Brent Justice, ironic last name, and Ashley Richards were named as people behind a viral video of Ashley who, not showing her face of course, bound and gagged a kitten, then videotaped herself crushing the kitten to death with her foot. Ashley admitted to killing up to 2 animals per day, puppies, kittens, chickens, whatever. And she taped these killings for money from fetish sites. Although I can't be too sure where she got hundreds of animals, I would be willing to bet that the Free to a Good Home ads were at least one of her so-called suppliers. Some small animals are rehomed to go to new homes as feed for reptiles. Other animals are taken by puppy mills for breeding. People who use animals for experiments and research often turn to these ads as well. They can easily gather enough for a lot to sell to USDA-approved dealers for research and get $25 a pop. A newer phenomenon is pet flipping. Flipping animals that are marked as free or being sold for very little money, then reselling the dogs for a profit. I can only imagine that flipped dogs typically end up in one of the aforementioned categories. There are numerous dogs that our rescue alone has saved from Craigslist ads. In addition to our s'mores pups, Jersey Girl, Sophia, Jewel, Kenzie, and Opie are 5 more of the Bella Reed Pitbull Rescue alumni dogs that were posted on Craigslist. When we contacted their owners, they were so happy to have a rescue step in. They had no idea about the dangers of Craigslist. But our little Josie was a different story. She was posted on Craigslist for trade. And do you know what her owners wanted on Craigslist for trade? A Boost mobile phone. A follower of Bella Reed Pitbull Rescue went to save Josie and was able to negotiate $70 cash for trade. She is now living in the most wonderful home with 2 amazing human parents and a pitty sibling. PetAbuse.com also notes that Free to a Good Home advertisements, which are also a common method of placing unplanned litters in communities without shelters or overpopulated shelters, increase the risk of an animal becoming a victim. Intact male dogs are victims in 80% of canine cruelty cases, closely followed by puppies. There is currently a petition that is active on change.org asking Craigslist to remove all animal postings, or at the very least, add an obvious warning about the dangers of rehoming your animal online. There are nearly 350,000 signatures on the petition, and we implore each and every one of you to go to change.org and add your signatures as well. The laws in the cases of animal cruelty are lacking at best. In most cases, maximum sentences are not imposed in tried cases, and the defendant ends up with merely a slap on the wrist, a small fine, and maybe probation. We need our legislators to stand behind us and support higher penalties and maximum sentencing to help set a precedent. Just as recently as last week, we were presented with Sammy, the Cocker Spaniel who was found in a trash bag on the side of the road. The defendants in this case were given the maximum sentence, and the judge, Robert Lepore, was quoted as saying, "Animal cruelty is a substantial crime. It is unfortunate that judges elsewhere thought it appropriate to not give jail time to individuals who purposefully inflict harm on animals. Unless the defendants are sentenced to imprisonment for their depraved acts toward Sammy, they will not be deterred. We start where our voices will be heard. Petition Craigslist, Facebook, and all other social media outlets to ban the sale and free rehoming of animals. Reach out to your local governing officials and find out their stance on animal cruelty. Work with them to get spay and neuter laws into effect. We need to get the word out to people. Posting animals free and cheap online is dangerous for so many reasons. Use the social media outlets to blast these dangers and educate those who are unaware. As a civilized society, it is all of our responsibility to actively voice our concerns and promote the change that fosters an improved treatment of our animals. This begins with placing animals into homes that are safe and willing to provide love, care, and the necessities of life. I will end with a quote from Mahatma Gandhi. I hold that the more helpless a creature, the more entitled it is to protection by man from the cruelty of man. Thank you.
Thanks very much. A great organization, Bell Reed Pit Bull Rescue. There's also some other organizations at tables over here I want to